Welcome to the Creative Push, an intimate and diverse artist interview series. Here, artists and makers of all kinds share tips, advice, knowledge, and inspiration that you can learn from. This series is a part of the Learn and Create platform to help artists further their education in creativity, art, and business. I'm your host, Sherry O'Neill, a photographer, artist, writer, and educator. Today we have Theresa Dyer. She is a Nashville sculptor. Theresa, welcome.
Thank you, Sherry. Thanks.
Theresa, tell us a little bit about what made you pursue sculpting, where your artist career started, and how long you've been doing it.
Oh, well, I've been sketching and drawing all my life, but maybe about 8 years ago, I started fooling around with sculpture, just little pieces. Of course, they were awful at first. I wasn't prepared for how much I enjoyed it and how fast the time would go. The whole day would go by, and I just really enjoyed doing it. And I really enjoy figurative sculpture as opposed to abstract, because the human body is just unbelievably interesting, and you're forever finding new ways to express different poses, different aspects of things. It's completely fascinating.
Did you play with art a lot when you were a kid?
Yeah, drawing and painting. I never actually did any sculpture, but I drew a lot. I always had a sketch pad and pencils and paper, and art class, on Fridays, that was the big deal, getting to do art projects.
Were there any other creative people in your family?
My dad painted, but that's, not what he did for a living. And my mom was a school teacher, and I would help her do the bulletin boards, things like that.
What's your fondest memory as a child pertaining to art?
One time, we had to bring in an LP record. These was Christmas presents for our parents. Put different pine cones, things on it, and then spray paint it gold. And talk about awful looking, but I was so proud of that. And I guess that's what I remember artistically.
So you transitioned from drawing into sculpture at some point in your career. Explain how that worked.
Well, I became an architect, and I used drawing for that a lot. Sketches, 3D, 1-point perspective, 2-point perspective, sketching with clients. I drew a lot during that time because it was so natural and because clients love to see things just come up from the paper. Sculpture just came from a time in my life when I needed art. I signed up for a class, and the drawing class was full, but the sculpture class was wide open. So I thought, what the hell? I'll just do that. And it was amazing. It was a whole new world that opened up for me just by accident. I never would have signed up for a sculpture class.
And how long ago was that?
That was probably about 8 years ago. So started making small figures out of terracotta. And then eventually I got a little bit bored with that. And also with terracotta, you have to keep it moist while you're working on it, and I tend to work very slow. I transitioned to an oil-based clay, which allows you to take all the time you want. The good thing about terracotta is you fire it, and then you have a piece there. With oil base, it's a laborious process. You have to make a mold and then wax, and it's that whole ancient lost wax process. It's extremely expensive. So it was an expensive hobby for a long time. But then I finally started selling pieces. Then I won a national competition for Little Rock, and then I've gotten commissions since then. I just finished a Holocaust piece to go in at Congregation Micah in Brentwood. It grew little by little.
So your actual career was in architecture, correct?
Right.
Right. So how many years did you work in that industry?
Oh, gosh, like all my life. I've always done design. I did interior design for a long time. And then working for architects, I realized I could do that. I went back and got my degree in architecture and got licensed. Went toward the commercial end of it as opposed to residential. And I enjoyed that a lot more. It's the way it takes up space, but from different angles, it looks completely different. And I had my own practice, architecture practice, which I've kept for a long time in between, and I'm just recently finishing up projects, but at the same time doing sculpture.
Tell us a little bit about your technique as a sculptor?
Well, a lot of times, I'll keep a sketch pad, and if I get an idea, it's not necessarily from something I've seen, but a lot of times it is. I'll be downtown or I'll see somebody walk across the street, and it can trigger something that I'd like to express, or it's just an idea, and then you start thinking of all these other things, and I like to use mythological type ideas too. I'll hear an ancient story, or I'll read a reference to some Greek god or goddess, and the stories are so complex and they're so interesting. A lot of times I'll try and weave that into something I see in present day and marry the two together.
From what I see in your work, I see a lot of kids, but I also see the female form.
The female form is gorgeous. I mean, it just is timeless.
And those are your two primary sources of subject matter?
I do male figures from time to time if something's interesting to me, but I guess a lot of times I go back to the female form.
Do you see yourself creating sculpture out of objects in the future?
Actually, I've seen abstracted forms that I appreciate, especially from other artists. Maybe that's something I could try in the future. I don't think it holds my attention as much.
You knew that you wanted to get out of architecture, and you knew you kind of dedicate your career to sculpture full time. How did you go about the transition? And you said that you entered some contests. Was that the beginning stage?
There's an organization called Cafe. I joined it and I saw something that was going on in Little Rock. It's a national shows they had. They were accepting 49 artists, and I just thought, what the hell? I'll just try it. They accepted me. I was surprised. Then there was a competition within that for a life-size piece in front of the City Hall in Little Rock. And again, I really didn't think I had a chance, but I had an idea and I just made a maquette. I did sketches. They had, different levels that it went through, and I finally made this last cut, and then I won. And so that was my first life-size piece that I did. And it was amazing. I mean, doing life-size large pieces is it's addictive because you're thinking in like 1-to-1 scale ratio.
How did you determine, or are you still determining your pricing? Because that is one thing that most artists struggle with.
It is so hard. And you read about that. How do you bill? How do you charge things? And going through a gallery, that's a whole different thing. And I'm still learning a lot of things. Before I was in a gallery and I was trying to sell pieces on my own, sculpture, it's hard because just the initial costs are incredibly hard. Foundry costs for just a small 18-inch high piece, you could be paying $2,000, $2,500 just to have a bronze piece. And then selling it, talk to initial clients, because they've never gone through it, they don't understand what it takes to get there and why are they paying so much for this piece.
Let's outline the process. So you create a clay sculpture in your studio.
Right. And then a mold needs to be made from it. So they'll make a rubber mold. Or there's different types, silicone rubber, different types of rubber molds. Then a mother mold, which is the plaster that goes around that and holds the rubber in its place. Then it goes to the foundry, and that process is a 7 or 8 step process. And the last part of the process is the patina that's put on it. That's a chemical process. There's a myriad of different colors. You've seen sculpture in parks, and a lot of them are dark that have aged, but there's just beautiful, beautiful colors that you can obtain. Then it's patina. Then you have a clear cut of wax. Then it needs to be put on a base, marble, granite, any type of stone, wood. Then it's ready to be displayed.
Once you've created your work of art in clay form, how do you find the rest of your team in order to process and turn it into an actual statue?
And it's trial and error, but I have a gentleman that does my molds, and he's helped me so much because he used to work at a foundry, and he knows the whole process. So he was instrumental in helping me. Also, there's 2 sculptors that have been kind of mentors to me and answered so many questions that I've had. You can read books all day, but if you go to somebody that's been through it, they cut through all of that, and they can just tell you the best way to do things. I guess I would recommend just find a mentor that's willing to share with you and be generous with their time. And that's something I hope I get, where somebody would want to come to me and I would be more than happy to tell them anything I would know. The 2 gentlemen that have helped me, one of them is Russ Faxon and one is Alan LaQuire. I'll always be grateful to them.
What is creativity to you? What does it mean to you?
I used to think it was having the ability to draw or to write a piece of music. But now I guess I see people being creative in just about anything. Even accounting, even cooking, anything like that. I think creating is just using what you have inside of you to solve a problem. In the visual arts, solving a problem would be to get an idea you've got out. It's inside you. You want to express it, getting it out. Now I think I see, at least for me, anybody that can solve a problem to help themselves, to especially help other people, that's creative.
What inspires you to create?
Sometimes you'll go through phases where nothing speaks to you or you don't really want to do anything, and then all of a sudden you start seeing possibilities and you want to get it down on paper before you forget. Something just looks super interesting. It doesn't happen all the time, and it's so sporadic.
And what do you do when you get stuck?
I know if I try and push it, it'll make it worse. So I'll just try and do something else and maybe revisit it later. I'll go back to the studio and I'll try again. And then if things start flowing and I see that I'm back in some sort of groove, well, that's great.
So I know you have a studio at your house and you've bounced around town a little bit. I know it's hard to find reasonable pricing in studios in Nashville these days. Are you comfortable working from home?
Well, working from home, it's not super great for me because the space isn't large. And to me, if you're in a big open space, especially for sculpture, it just invites things to happen. Renting space is great for larger projects, but then, when I don't have those anymore, I can't justify that cost.
What do you see in the future for your work?
Oh, I would love to do a large piece every year. That would be wonderful for me. That would be a dream. If I could do a large commission piece every year, that would be such an honor and it would be a gift to me.
So how do you market yourself as a sculptor? Do you have representation or do you go out and find the work? And if you do, how do you do that?
My work is at Gallery 202 in Franklin, Tennessee, and Kelly Harwood is the owner, and he's great. And he's an artist himself, so he understands the process. He understands the whole artistic aspect of it. He's helped me with actually the commission for the Holocaust piece. They got me that project, which I'm really grateful for.
Do you use any social media marketing avenues?
I started a Facebook page, but I find I forget about it. I haven't put anything on there in a long time. I try and dedicate Instagram just for my sculpture. And mainly I use that as a tool because I follow a lot of sculptors. I like seeing what's out there. It's just interesting to meet or at least see artists from other countries and see what kind of work they do. And as realistically as I always comment on their work.
How did you approach the gallery to represent you? Was that difficult?
No, I went to them and one morning I just got a couple of pieces and I drove out there, asked them if they would look at it. And they were kind enough to look at my work and say that they would have.
Moving forward, what would you like to learn that you haven't learned yet?
I think I would like to loosen up a little. Talking about anatomy, I really study that. I really replicate forms as realistically as I can, but been finding I'm now taking liberties, elongating things, doing more of an abstracted view, not too much, but of some of the forms I do. That to me gives you a little bit of freedom to try different things.
Do you have any advice for any creative person or artist who wants to learn more about making sculpture out of clay?
Maybe try and put something out as much as you can and don't let time lapse between one project and another so much. I think keeping what you've got to give going helps more things happen. Just get started. Don't wait for, the right opportunity. Go to Plaza Arts, get you some just get a block of it, of terracotta clay, oil-based clay. I would start with terracotta and just start creating, and nothing's right or wrong. Just get the basics of things. Take a class, but just don't wait. Just do it.
Do you have artists that you followed or that have inspired you to become an artist over the years?
First, I started idolizing different architects. One that to me is as much of a sculptor as he is an architect is Tadao Ando, and he's a Japanese architect. But I like Calder. He does, the mobiles.
as a creative or as a sculptor? Take us through an average day for you.
Well, when I'm working at the studio, get there mid-morning. It's a great day when there's no meetings or anything, and I've got my lunch and I've got my music, and I know I've got 6 or 7 hours of sculpting in front of me. It depends on where you're at in the project. You'll just start with a certain area and you'll just start working it, and then just to keep stepping back and looking at it, going, if it's a life-size piece, going around it, not working too much on one area at a time, but work the whole piece little by little as you go. And that I seem to have more success with that.
Has COVID affected your business at all in the last year and a half?
It's actually been good because, I'm not really a people person, and so kind of an introvert anyway, so it really didn't bother me. It forces you to deal with projects that you've got going.
Well, Theresa, thank you so much for being on the Creative Push. I hope you enjoyed the process, and I didn't ask you too many questions.
No, it was great, and questions that you asked made me think about things a little more clearly than, before.
Awesome. I appreciate you doing the interview with us. Thank you so much for listening. As always, my intention is to offer inspiration that excites you to want to get out there and create something amazing. Be sure to check out some of the other episodes, and I would love for you to share this with your friends if you think it would help them. There's more information below in the show notes, including links to other great stories, tips, and resources. Drop me a message or comment at any time, and I hope that you'll sign up to be a part of this creative tribe.